Bread and Breakfast, written by Nico Tatarovich, read by Carrie Fisher.
Sometime around the spring of 1975, a young couple called Paul and Lisa took a terrible risk that many others have made before and since. They decided to go and stay in a bed and breakfast without booking. All they knew was that a bank holiday weekend was stretched out ahead of them, and that Teffington-on-Nye was supposed to be nice, actually, and was one of them spa towns, or something like that. The trip was prompted by a period of unspoken staleness in their relationship. They weren't getting old exactly, but they'd lost some of the gung-ho, suck-it-and-see adventurousness of youth, and it was a chance to prove that they still knew how to have fun. Arriving at the village in the late afternoon, they realized too late that hundreds of other identical couples had been spontaneous at exactly the same time, and so finding a room was a nightmare. Eventually, someone recommended a place on the edge of town. It was a bit odd and no one knew much about it, but it had a vacancy sign up that very morning for the first time in, well, forever. When they found it, it was all gnarled up like a wonky tooth. Maybe we should just go home, Lisa grimaced, surveying the sign skeptically, and thinking that spontaneity probably worked better when planned in advance. "Oh, come on, fussy boots," said Paul. "We haven't got much choice now, and anyway, you're only young once, aren't you?" Lisa wasn't sure, but nobody wants to be the boring one in a couple, do they? So in they went. Inside, the place was full of charming antiques, relics, and the ephemera of days gone by. There was even an old washing mangle. "It's like the bloomin' Dark Ages," said Lisa, shuddering. "Well, hark at the Queen of Flippin' Sheba. I like it. It's quaint," insisted Paul. The owners, Nathaniel and Agnes Sprottle, did indeed have a vacancy and were very keen to fill it. Very. "Well, here are two fine young specimens," said Nathaniel, his hands trembling slightly. "How long do you intend to stay?" "Well, we've only got clothes for a couple of nights, really," said Lisa. "Oh, nonsense! We can launder your clothes. Stay as long as you wish," smiled Agnes, shutting the door behind them and locking it. Nathaniel then set out a list of petty, often harsh, and sometimes borderline paranoid rules, as long as his weary arms. Breakfast is at 5:30 a.m. till 7 sharp. Lights out 10 p.m. latest. Showering must be completed in 3 minutes maximum. The water here must not be wasted. It's very precious. The windows must not be tampered with. The refuse baskets are to remain empty. Please try not to cough on the pillows. We cannot afford another cholera outbreak. No leaving your room in the hours of darkness. Audible copulation won't be tolerated. The list went on and on. Alone in their room, Lisa was feeling unsure. "They're a bit on the strict side," she said. "Maybe we should find somewhere else." "Well, look who's getting fussy in her old age," said Paul teasingly. And, as is tradition in B&Bs, an early night ensued. The couple slept well enough in fits and starts, considering that the bed felt like it was about 200 years old. It wasn't easy to ignore the indescribable knocking and groaning noises coming from the building's innards, but then it never is in a strange room, is it? And it could be worse, couldn't it? Breakfast was worse. When Paul and Lisa asked for scrambled eggs on toast, the idea was met with gasps. by the other two old couples in attendance, one of whom was sharing a hearing trumpet. Well, Tuesday is usually our egg day, but I suppose it can be arranged under the circumstances, sighed and apparently put out Nathaniel. The other guests nodded meekly and returned to their bowls. We believe in sacrifices here, he grinned through his yellow teeth. Well, that's very nice of you, thank you, cringed Lisa. Half an hour later, Paul and Lisa were ready to pop down to the town to explore. Unfortunately, Nathaniel pointed out that they don't really encourage day trips at this establishment, and that the doors would be bolted after lunch anyway, so it was best not to bother. It was then announced that dinner would be served at 4:30. Tired and annoyed, Lisa plucked up the courage to say that would it be okay if they went out to eat alone after all? But Agnes had already prepared food for that evening and became tearful at the thought of it all going to waste. Fine, no, of course, we'd love to eat with you, agreed Lisa, the words sticking in her throat. The young pair went back to their rooms. Paul, I think we should leave. I'm not paying to experience a creepy nightmare, whispered Lisa seriously. Oh, come on. They're not creepy. They just like having us around because we're young. I know it's not the Ritz, but look on the bright side. We might get a go on the spindle tomorrow. How often can you say that? Insisted Paul. Dinner was interesting. Bread and special water for the others, whatever that was, and for Paul and Lisa, a roasted chicken. Was it a chicken? There will be no eggs tomorrow, announced Agnes, on account of the new bloods eating Macy, the hen. We must think of it as an offering. The others nodded. And then she proposed a toast to strength. Meanwhile, the appalling noises from under the floorboards were getting worse. But whatever signals Lisa tried to send to Paul with her panicking eyes, he gave nothing back. It was fine here. Fine. By 8:30, Paul and Lisa had been sent to bed. Can you seriously not see that this place is mental? She asked his lumpen back as they lay in bed. You said we never do anything different. He smiled to himself smugly, now enjoying his position as the chilled-out, adventurous half of the couple. Sleep didn't come so easily for Lisa. The cursed howls of whatever the hell it was in the walls wouldn't allow it. Eventually, she could take the noise no more. She had to find out where it was coming from. She slipped the door open, crept into the corridor, and followed the morose din. She pulled aside a curtain and found a hidden door. As she tentatively opened it, Richard and Marjorie, one of the old couples from dinner, suddenly emerged from the murky gloom. They were sweating and covered in soot. Both looked confused or maybe suspicious. Have you been sent to help? Pleaded Marjorie. Hush, woman, Richard butted in. Tomorrow is the start. The start of what? Asked Lisa. Of a new life, dear. He smiled, patting her shoulder with filthy hands as he passed. Lisa hurried back to their room and woke Paul up, telling him that these people were clearly devil worshippers or cannibals. Or worse, if you can get worse than a cannibal. She told him what the old man had said about tomorrow, but Paul, who had had enough of her delusion, said that it was just a phrase, a pep-up. You get on a bumper sticker. Tomorrow is the first day of the rest of your life. You know, that sort of thing. Now shut up and go to sleep." In the morning, Lisa felt confused. Maybe she was being silly. The night can do that to you. And so they went down for breakfast as normal. Only it wasn't normal. Nathaniel, Agnes, and 2 other guests were standing staring at them and looking forlorn and hopeful and terrifying. "It's time," announced Nathaniel. "What are you talking about?" barked Paul. "What in the hell is going on here?" "Oh, is something wrong, Paul?" said Lisa with grave sarcasm. "Don't be scared with your alabaster skin and your pert young bodies," said Agnes softly. "Life is such a wonderful thing, don't you think?" said Nathaniel, with more than a glint of madness. "I beg your pardon," said Paul, Macy the hen turning uneasily in his stomach. He was now horribly aware that Lisa's instincts had been keener than his all along. They ran like spooked cats. But no, the back door was locked. Surely there was another way out of here. Lisa remembered the curtain door, and they hurried through it, their hearts thumping with fear. They found themselves in a gloomy stairwell, unsure of whether to turn back or proceed. They started to descend. The air smelled damp and ancient, and then they saw it. A medieval donkey wheel-operated well, and next to it, a pump. With a chilling breeze, Nathaniel's cold hand arrived on Paul's shoulder, terrifying him, the others flanking him like needy ghouls. "We work in shifts, my dears," began Nathaniel. 6 hours at a time, but with only 6 of us left, the workload is too much. Alas, we are weakening." "What does it do?" gulped Paul, imagining the worst. Nathaniel proceeded to explain that the ancient well provided just enough water for them to survive, and that everyone in this guest house was at least 400 years old, kept youthful by a secret supply of water so pure that it was a source of eternal life. As long as you keep taking the magic waters, you will be preserved as you are. That's why we haven't strayed from this building for many a century, Nathaniel continued. "And if you stop," asked Lisa tentatively, "he simply catches up your real age and he goes dead immediately, like what happened to old Barnabas and Rosalie." The others bowed their heads sadly. That explained the sudden vacancy. "But never mind that," smiled Agnes, trying to put a positive spin on it. "You were sent to us, and we should very much like you to stay forever." "No thanks, I'd rather die," said Paul, more poetically than he intended. Thankfully, escaping didn't turn out to be that hard. And a few careful pushes and shoves later, Paul and Lisa were screaming off in their Ford Cortina. Eventually, they pulled in at a service station, and in the silence that followed, they looked kindly at each other's faces. Paul apologized for having been such a twat the entire weekend. And then Lisa saw something she wasn't expecting to see. She leaned forward, furrowing her brow, and plucked a single gray hair from Paul's head. Their eyes met, suddenly aware of their mortality. "I suppose you just have to accept getting older," said Paul. "Yeah, who'd want to live like that anyway?" agreed Lisa. They both shuddered at the thought of it. "Mind you," said Paul, "eternal youth, though, huh?" You had to admit that was a big one. 40 years later, and Paul and Lisa, I'm glad to say, are still together and looking remarkable for their age. They hadn't seen themselves running a B&B in Teffington. It just happened spontaneously, I suppose, when the previous owners of Ye Old Guest House had sadly suffered a tragic mangling accident and died. Of course, it had to be modernized, a plumbing rehaul and an electric pump that did all the work, not to mention new showers, a washing machine. But some of the oldest customers were still regulars, and they said it was much better now. More fun, less boring. Well, you're only young once, aren't you?